There are 4,218 PS2 games, and I'm beating every one of them. I've got to own the game because I'm playing everything on the original hardware, but I've beefed it up with a RetroTink 5X, some component cables, and more to come soon. Can I do this before I die of old age? I hope so. The Mega Man Anniversary Collection was developed by Atomic Planet Entertainment and released in 2004 for the PS2 and GameCube, and in 2005 for the Xbox. It contains 8 of the original Mega Man games and 2 bonus games. While it was well received, many cited the lack of interesting extras and the GameCube's weird choice of switching the jump and fire buttons with no way of changing them back, while the Xbox version just came out too late. Can I beat 8 different Mega Man games? The Mega Man Anniversary Collection is a collection of Mega Man games from the NES era and a few from the future eras, just number 7 and number 8, but 1 through 6 are definitely on the NES, and this was some 30 years ago I played them originally, way back when the NES was the system to have. This journey is going to be just a little different then, because there are 8 whole games I'm going to talk about, and I'm not going to do an in-depth dive on each of them because it would be a very long video. So instead, I'm going to talk about each of the Mega Man games in general, talk about the things I enjoyed, the things I didn't enjoy, some of the parts I had trouble on, some of the cool things about them, and we'll go from there. First of all, Mega Man as a game is pretty simple. You run, you jump, and you shoot. And this is to get over obstacles, to destroy enemies, and to run away from enemies. It's a pretty simple game. There are some extra things on top of it, like a couple special abilities you can get in pretty much every single one of the games. And the big thing is, when you destroy one of the bosses, you get to use their weapon as your own. And each of the bosses has a weakness to the other boss's weapons, meaning that at the very beginning of the game, you use your regular normal gun or your Mega Buster, and that will defeat one boss. When you defeat them, you try and use their weapon to find the boss that's weak to it and exploit that weakness. And you'll do a chain of events where eventually you'll be able to exploit every single boss's weakness and kill them quickly. Now, each Mega Man game depends on exactly what that weakness is and how weak they are to it. Some games allow you to kill the bosses almost instantly with their weakness, and some games make you still fight the boss a little bit before you just obliterate them without a second thought, which is interesting. Do you give the player the ability to just win instantly, or do you still make them fight for it? On top of this, the story is practically the same each time. There are 2 scientists, Dr. Light and Dr. Wily. Dr. Light believes that robots can be made to help people of the future and just make things better, and Dr. Wily wants to take over the world. So obviously they go their separate ways. Dr. Wily makes bad robots and releases them into the city, and Dr. Light makes Mega Man, among a couple other robots that we'll see later. But Mega Man is his main one, the one that we use, and we use him to clean up the city of Dr. Wily's robots. There are some slight variations on those stories, but honestly they always end up being the same. Dr. Light, Dr. Wily, Mega Man, and a bunch of bosses. Starting with Mega Man 1, we get only 6 bosses. Usually there's about 8 per game, but this one begins with 6. I guess, they're just trying things out. And these bosses aren't really too bad. Honestly, Mega Man was not a hard game to beat, the first one. The other ones were, and they all have their own caveats, but this one is their first attempt, and it was not nearly as difficult, although it was still fun. I also have to say that instead of talking about the music throughout the video, I'm just going to say this here, Mega Man has some of the best video game music ever made, and I could make a 2 or 3 hour long video talking about it, so we'll just say that all the music here is fantastic. Although Mega Man 7 and 8 aren't ones I'm familiar with as much as I am the number 1 through 6 games, but those games have great music too. So it's like a win-win. You just get to play some new games and go, oh hey, the music is just as good here as it was in the old games. All the music is fantastic. It's all memorable, and it's just good job, team. Good job. Interestingly enough, my first boss fight is Cutman, and I don't die one single time. He isn't that hard of a boss once you figure out his pattern of throwing his little cutters and then jumping around. It's pretty simple. He dies quickly to the Mega Buster, and I move on from there. The level isn't too memorable either in any special fashion, not like some of the other ones. It's fine for sure, but it's not as memorable as, say, ones with blocks that disappear and reappear randomly for you. So I get his weapon and I move on. Now Gutsman stage. This one has this very interesting little platforming section at the beginning where these platforms will move back and forth, and there's a break in the line that you have to watch out for. When you see the base of the platform hit that break, it's going to drop, meaning you have to jump or get off of it somehow. So you have to be careful, and this is difficult. It's very, very quick timing, and you can easily get distracted by trying to watch for other platforms, or just jump early, or never jump at all. Here it is, the classic spikes in a pit, where you're going to be jumping over platforms and fighting enemies with spikes at the bottom that will instantly kill you. Yes, that's right, you do have a health bar, and you can pick up health, but by God, are they going to make it hard for you. You can't just go through the entire game without dying immediately somewhere, and in this game, there pretty much aren't any iframes. In some of the later games when you get hit, you have some invincibility for a moment, so if you get hit by an enemy and fall on some spikes, you will live for, maybe 1 or 2 seconds, and you have a chance to get off the spikes. But in this game, pretty much no. Electman's stage has a lot of vertical elements, and these little dudes are so annoying, man, and you really want to get off these platforms because if you don't, they will smack into you. You can shoot them to slow them down or to actually freeze them, but if you get on the platform with them, they will move double speed, and they only stay frozen for a second. That's right, they really did not care about your well-being. They were like, you know what, we're just gonna make it really hard. Iceman stage gives us Mega Man's first water mechanics, and in the water you have even more control over your jump than you do on land. Now Mega Man can control his jump pretty well. By holding A longer, you jump higher, within a limit, of course, but in the water you can go very, very high and fly out of the water. And also while you're jumping you can control his direction, and in the water you can do the same thing, which makes it a lot more fun, but things in the water can just demolish you just as easy on land, and you can plummet to the ground. Once you start dropping, you are dropping. You aren't just gonna stop. So if you've not paid attention to where you're gonna land, you're probably gonna land on some spikes. Fireman stage is full of, you guessed it, fire and lava, and if you fall in the lava you practically die just like you do on spikes, so you gotta watch it. But it isn't too bad. I was able to get through the stage without dying once until I reached Fireman himself. He was the hardest boss I fought because his pattern was something I never figured out. I pretty much just power through it with Iceman's ability, and I kill him, but only after I have to respawn and come back with like full health. Like, watch this. His fire just flies right through you, man, and jumping feels like, I don't know what I'm jumping for. Where am I jumping to? Where am I gonna land where his fire doesn't actually hit me? He's a hard boss. As with any Mega Man game, once you beat all of the bosses, you then fight Dr. Wily. But it's not just a boss fight. You have to go through several grueling stages that he has set up for you to get to him, to kill him, or, destroy him or stop him. Really, it's just stopping him. So, once you do this, you get to do some fun stages. The stages are a test of everything you've learned thus far, and you have to use the boss weapons to progress sometimes. Take, for example, this spot. I didn't even realize this, but if you use Iceman's weapon on these fire sticks, it will freeze them, and you can jump on them as if they were platforms, meaning that I don't get hurt. Right now I'm using a special ability you can get in one of the stages that creates your own platform. While that is really helpful and cool, it's not actually as helpful as you'd think it is, because those fire sticks can still hit you. So freezing them is the right move there, but I just didn't do it. At the end of this first set of stages, we fight one of the hardest bosses, for me at least, in Mega Man 1, which is the Yellow Devil. And this guy will reconstruct himself on each side of the stage, and you have to shoot him one time in his red eye. That's it. You pretty much get one shot. Then he uses a specific pattern each time he puts himself back together on the other side of the screen. You've got to jump or just move out of the way of those little dust particles that he has, and then you got to do it again over and over until he dies. Now I used Electman's ability mostly because it was easy, but I think it was his weakness. I'm not sure. It hurt him, and that's all I needed to do. But really learning this pattern was difficult. Even on the attempt I beat him, I still had trouble remembering the pattern because, it's all real fast. Okay, so this is something that becomes a staple of Mega Man, but we have a boss rush mode where we fight all of the original bosses in their original form. Everything about them is the same, but we fight them in a new arena. Mostly those arenas are just big empty boxes, and we have to try and remember the weaknesses we used on them before to kill them. Obviously, Cutman's here is just she's running into my bullets for me, but generally in the Mega Man games, you'll do these bosses one after another very quickly. One after another, one after another. This one has some stage in between and gives you chances to breathe in between the boss battles, whereas the other Mega Man games don't. You have to fight them immediately. Here's another boss that was kind of difficult. He has bubbles around himself, and you can use one of the boss's weapons to demolish them immediately. But, just like every other Mega Man game, Boss weapons come with an energy bar that looks very much like your own. Just like here in the menu, you can see this one is very low on energy. I needed to conserve my energy so that I could deal the damage to these guys I needed to do, but to do that I had to start with the Mega Buster. So then I had to work my way into the boss weapons to destroy them, because as these weird things and bubbles come down, they move quicker and quicker and quicker, and my hope is that I can destroy them before they kill me, and it's very hard. Okay, once I finally get to the last area of stages, I have to fight a few more bosses, the regular bosses, and then I get to fight Dr. Wily. But I get stuck at this part because Dr. Wily's boss fight is pretty damn tough, honestly. And I have to do a lot of a stage over when I lose all my lives, which kind of sucks. I wish it didn't happen like this, but that's how old games were. You have to redo quite a bit of stage before you can fight him again. And as you see here, I'm fighting through bosses that I have already fought before, the boss rush, right before I fight him. So I've got to kill these guys quickly and then get to him with as much health as I can so that I stand a chance. And let me tell you what, he's not easy. Dr. Wily has two phases. In the first one, he is weak to Fireman's attack. So we start by using that to hit the little pink gun that shoots those big, huge pellets in the most infuriating, arc that you've ever seen. Honestly, it's infuriating because at first you get hit by it in ways you don't expect to. And then Electman's weapon is really, really strong against this version, and mostly it's because of this ball that he shoots. That is a very odd arc as well. And it comes out of just the front of him. I don't know, it looks like it comes out of nowhere. But that thing does like little circles as it goes down, and you can't tell where it's gonna go. And it all depends on where you are and what you're doing as to where it's actually gonna end up. So it's really hard to tell, but with Electman's ability, you're able to shoot straight up into that little purple button. And then I panic shoot with my buster to kill him and finally stop Dr. Wily and his evil plans. Mega Man 2 is a actual love letter from the team who made Mega Man 1. They worked on it in their spare time and eventually showed their boss, who said, "Oh, this looks pretty cool. Maybe we should actually make it a Mega Man game." And they did, and it came out in a very, very short time after the first Mega Man. But that's because they had been working on it already. But Mega Man 2 is one of the most widely known Mega Man games, especially for the music, but all of the bosses as well. And it is very difficult. In my opinion, it's probably the most difficult one in this whole collection. And maybe part of it's just because of me. One of the bosses at the end gave me a lot of trouble, and honestly, once I figured him out, I could do it in one go now. But at first I couldn't, so let's start with Mega Man 2 now. Crashman's stage has some really fun platforms that follow these weird little paths, and then enemies come out of the corners of the screen and try and get you, so you gotta watch out where you're going, and the paths get more intricate as it goes on. Now, you can, by jumping a little early or using an ability, get up to a ladder early, but of course he's the first boss I fought, so I was only able to do it after it got to a certain point in the path. His boss fight is very hard to predict what he's gonna do. He jumps over your head and shoots a bomb straight down. You've really, really got to be careful when he's shooting his bomb. Now, he can only have one bomb at the screen at one time, so when he fires it, once it's on the ground, he can't fire another. So that's your cue to try and get out of the way and then come back and shoot him a couple times. Let him jump over your head because you know he can't shoot a bomb at you. Now, in this game is the first game that you have energy tanks. As you go through levels, you'll pick up little tanks on the ground that will be in your inventory and replenish all of your health. This is the only reason I'm able to beat some of these bosses. As you can tell, I am struggling hardcore against this guy, and these bosses I struggle very, very hard against. They just fast, they stick to your little Mega Man ass, and they won't leave you alone, man. They do not give you a moment's breath, and this came down to the wire. I was like losing my mind as that last bomb came out. Quickman's stage has a very recognizable obstacle, I guess is what you can call it, these yellow beams that come out of the sides of the screen. After the first couple you see, you do have to get used to it because eventually they will come out of the screen so fast and so randomly that you will need to know exactly where to go. Because if you don't, you will die instantly. Here is where it begins. If you don't know where you're going, yeah, that thing is gonna hit you. You have to land yep, there we go. You have to land exactly on the edge of that platform and fall, or you will die. It's how you do it every single time. So if you fight the boss and die and have to come back, or die just ahead of that, you'll have to redo it, and you'll have to memorize where the crap that beam's coming out of. Metal Man's stage and boss fight aren't too memorable in any specific way, except for his boss weapon. His boss weapon is very, very good against practically everything in the game because you can fire the blade in 8 different directions, diagonals as well, and you can fire them in rapid succession, which means that you can do lots and lots of damage to some of the enemies. So it's just a really good boss weapon to get. In fact, a lot of people suggest that you start by getting his so that you can destroy everything in the game, even like regular enemies. Woodman's boss fight is just so incredibly difficult. He starts with this leaf shield, and that leaf shield you cannot shoot bullets past. You have to shoot him once he's fired the shield at you. You must then watch for the top of the screen for the leaves falling down, and for when he fires his shield at you. And he will just slowly jump at you, meaning you've got to find a way underneath him and behind him if you wait too long. Flashman's stage is, pretty boring. It's got a lot of maze-like structures, but it's not necessarily hard, but he is a pushover. Metal Man's weapon makes quick work of him, and I don't even know what the crap he does. Bubble Man's stage is full of water and tons of perils in the water. As you can see, spikes at the top mean that you also cannot jump too high or you will die. Like instantly. Those spikes will kill you instantly. So you have to watch how high you jump as well as where you're about to fall. Otherwise, you just won't make it through a stage. Luckily, once you get past all of those perils, Bubble Man really isn't too difficult, especially with Metal Man's blade. You can just blast him in the face. Heat Man's stage is too memorable not to talk about, and that's because of these blocks that appear and disappear at will, and they do follow a pattern, which means that you at least have a chance. The problem is that it's practically all over this part of the level, and one section of the level has an extreme long sequence of these blocks. Now, right here you can see the blocks. You just have to kind of memorize when those things are going to happen. You need to memorize when the blocks are going to pop up and when they're going to disappear so you can jump at the appropriate times, because not all of them are just in a pattern. Some of them appear differently than you'd expect, or in a way that would be really hard to jump past unless you know beforehand what it looks like. There's also apparently a sequence that allows you to just fall in the lava. Like at the very end here, one of the blocks will miss time or something will happen. At least that's what people were telling me. I don't actually know. I made it past this part, maybe because I'm lucky? I don't know, but I was able to make it past it. But this part is definitely a spot that is difficult. Airman's stage is pretty difficult, although it's not super memorable for me. Really, the boss is. He is too difficult. He fires out these wind tornadoes that neither you can walk through or fire a weapon through, which is extremely ridiculous. Like, I understand that the point is that you need to jump over them and hit him with the weapon, which is cool, but his wind patterns are such that sometimes you cannot dodge them. So not only are you trying to jump over these stupid little whirlwinds, but the wind is pushing you back as well, meaning that you've got to time your jump and the forward movement of Mega Man in the right way, or you're going to get hit by these stupid things. And sometimes, I swear to God, the patterns are impossible to jump past, unless you are, I don't know, somewhere you can't be. I'm not really sure how to get past them, so this guy is always complete luck to me. I make it through the first Wily stage because it's very, very short and has very few enemies. Instead, we have this big boss fight against a dragon that appears after you go across these white blocks. And for some reason, for some ungodly reason, I get stuck here so hard. And it's probably because I'm trying so hard to use what I assume is his weakness. And that's Heat Man's weapon, and you can charge it up and attack him and deal a lot of damage, almost killing him in one hit. The problem is that while you're charging it, you've got to hold the button down and you've got to pay attention to where you're jumping. See, this boss only allows you 3 squares to stand on while you're fighting him. As you jump across them, he slowly comes towards you, breaking them as you get closer and closer to the triple block area. The problem is once you get there, the only 3 blocks you have are just kind of suspended in the air. You've got to... The whole point of this section is that you need to figure out his pattern or where to bait his shots so that you can safely land on one of these blocks. And it's really hard for some reason. I don't know if it's just me, but I could not figure it out, and it took me so long to beat him. For a short time, I believe it's the best thing to do to stand here and farm this gray bacon, which if you stand there, you can shoot them infinitely and they'll drop power-ups and free lives, which free lives is what I want because I don't want to have to start this section over. But then I realized that every time you start over from the beginning of the stage, and it's a very, very short stage. So I spent a lot of time farming this little bacon popping out of this thing for literally nothing. And that's probably where most of my time went because I was so scared of dying to the dragon. This guy sucked. In my defense, once I figured out what to do, it was super simple after this. I beat him and quit the game that night because I was tired of it and came back and I had to fight him again. I was able to beat him the second go just by paying attention and using the Mega Buster instead. If I just slammed on the button and paid attention to jumping instead, I kill him quickly. I could just stand on this one block and that's it. We've got another farming section here into a boss that's kind of weird. You shoot the floor and wall and ceiling tiles. It's not a hard boss, just kind of weird. Eventually, I make it to this level, and this level was horrible, and it's horrible for a weird reason. So you've got several screens where you're riding these platforms, and that's not even the hard part. In fact, you can farm these guys by standing on different ladders and stuff, getting health and powering up your weapons. The issue comes from the boss of this area. See, right before the boss, you get to this section that I have a lot of trouble with, and I don't know how many other people had trouble with this, but for some reason, I just couldn't get around these guys. These little stupid fuckers in these tunnels, because the second you get to them, they shoot you. Now, if you saw there, I used a charged up fire shot to instantly kill him, but you have to know he's there, of course, before you do it. Then if you move too far forward, they will respawn. Those guys in the machines are very strong, and you have to slowly take them down. And even when you do, the little guy pops out of them and still lives, and still just hangs around back there. So if you walk back a little too far, he'll kill you. These guys make me lose a lot of health into this boss right here. Now, this boss needs you to use these charge missiles. You have to use these things or you don't win. You've got to blow up these walls, or at the very least use something to lift yourself over the walls, but most of them still have to be blown up because to get to the weird little things behind it, you have to use those bomb weapons. The problem is that it takes so long and so many bombs to actually blow up these walls to get to these dudes, you're probably going to die. These things can shoot you in a very odd way. Just from wherever you are on the screen, they can kill you. So it takes me multiple tries to get up enough stuff to blow everything up before I have to continue. Otherwise, I just can't do it. Here it is. This is pretty much the exact thing they use for the next several Mega Man games. They have a screen where you can go into capsules. It will take you to each boss, and you have to refight that boss. When you do get a little bit of health afterwards, which is nice, which means that if you're good at a certain boss, you save them until you're low on health. Then you go kill them easily, get their free health pickup, and move on to a harder boss when you have full health. Obviously, there's one boss per weakness, so you should have enough weapons for each of the bosses, unless you decide to use Metal Man's stuff, which he does have quite a big energy bar, but otherwise, you have to do this every time you want to fight Wily when you lose to him, because Wily in this game is hard. It's not even his actual final form that is hard, it's this ship yet again with these weird arcing shots that are just maddening. I just can't understand the arc that they're gonna take and where they're gonna land. So I have to just hope for the best. And you can see that he just obliterates me so quickly every time I do it. Now, as long as I haven't continued, I can go right to him and fight him again. So you start with Metal Man's weapons so that you can hit him without taking damage, kind of, because his second phase is also pretty difficult. Although you can use the Mega Buster. I believe after I lose all of Metal Man's energy for his weapon, I just go to the Mega Buster and hope for the best. Honestly, it's easy to use the Metal Arm, but it doesn't matter. And then his next weakness is the Crash Bomb, and you just shoot him with it. That's it, and hope that you can do it before you get hit by these stupid bouncing balls. For some reason, at the very end of the game, Dr. Wily turns into an alien. And you fight him, and his weakness is Bubble Man's weapon, so you gotta make sure you have some of Bubble Man's weapon ready for him. And once you beat him, that's it. And this one actually takes just a certain amount of bubbles. Now, he's very strong. That one shot he does is very strong, but as long as you're just taking your time, you can kill him here. But that's it. And it turns out he's not actually an alien, it's just Dr. Wily pretending to be. I don't know, for funsies. Dumbass. Mega Man 3 is by far my favorite Mega Man. I like the bosses, I played it the most, it has my most favorite music, like stages like Gemini Man and Snake Man. They're just so good. All the music is good, but I had to say something about it here because I played this one the most when I was younger, and like I said, that was around 30 years ago, so I just jammed out to this game every day. The stages and bosses in this one get even more intense and more interesting and more creative. I mean, these guys suck. This section sucks. But I do like fighting Snake Man. Okay, I lied about fighting him and liking it. I think this boss sucks, man. Look at this. He shoots little snakes, which aren't the problem. It's his jumping. For some reason, I cannot understand the pattern of his jumping. When he's gonna jump, when I should jump, and when he's gonna toss out little baby snakes to come eat my ass. Gemini Man stage is just really weird and cool. You're on like this crystal planet, and then you're under what I assume is some kind of water here, but not really. And you've got these weird rocks around here, and then of course these fish eggs that you break and they come flying at you. It's just a weird level, but with a beautiful song. I have trouble with Needle Man because of his constant jumping and shooting of needles, but then I find this weird little thing that he does where you can catch him in a loop where he wants to just constantly use his head to attack you, and when he does that you can jump and shoot him a couple times. It's really safe, and I'm glad I found it because he was difficult. I don't know if this is like the way that he's supposed to be beaten, but I just kind of get lucky with it. I mean, I'll take it. He does suck when you fight him in the boss rush mode, but you do have his weakness at that point, so it's not too bad. At this point, I'm getting everyone's weakness. You know, I've been through quite a few bosses, so I have everyone's weakness down, and it just takes like some hope and some energy tanks to get me through some of these guys, because they are hard, and I don't want to learn the pattern for like an hour just to get one boss, so sometimes I just brute force it. Okay, so once you get to the Wily stages, this really cool thing happens that some people don't like, but I kind of thought was neat, is these robots that look just like the bosses from the game will suddenly gain the abilities of the bosses from Mega Man 2, which luckily for me I just played, and they do have the weakness of the new bosses. You just have to figure it out. They all have new weaknesses. So you get a chance to fight them again, which some of them are wonderful, like Airman, he sucks, but you do find his weakness and you can kill him pretty quickly. We also get Breakman, or Proto Man, and he's like this special version of like Mega Man that Wily made or something like that. I can't remember the story behind him, but you fight him every so often and eventually he ends up helping you. So he's like a character and he kind of turns into what I assume is Zero, but you know, like in the new series. But Proto Man is always going to be the one I remember for the little whistle song. So good. Now, because of the way that my death counter was working at the time, I was using a weird script. I did pass 999 lifetime deaths. I reached 1,000, everyone, that's right. Way back a long time ago, I played this game a long time ago. I reached 1,000 deaths, and now I'm well over that, almost hitting 3,000. So yeah, thanks Mega Man for having the most deaths. I mean, do we count this in the new video that's coming out, the 100 video, for the game with the most deaths? Or is this compilation not something we should put on there? Should it be God Hand because it's an actual PS2 game? Here is the first phase of Dr. Wily, and it sucks, man. You've got to be underneath this thing to break it, and you also need to dodge his little legs. You can actually slide under his legs at this point, which is cool. The slide mechanic is neat and has been helpful, and I'm glad that they added it into the game. But this guy is just so goddamn tough, and he's just after the boss rush. So if you lose all your continues, you must do the boss rush again. And it's just lame, man. This last version of Dr. Wily and this big robot is really not too hard. You hit him a couple times, and at the very end, you can use Top Man's ability, which his ability has been fairly useless this whole game. And if you use it, it will instantly kill him. I'm not really sure why, but I accept. Okay, on to Mega Man 4, and this one I also like. Skull Man, Pharaoh Man, even Toad Man, even though he's like a pushover. He's a fucking pushover. He's the one you want to start with, since he's so damn easy. He's got this stupid little combo you can do on him. He just can't do anything to you. But I start with Dust Man for some odd reason. We get some more heavy-hitting water levels, and these ones really put on the pressure of making sure you don't jump too high or jump too far out and land in nothing or on pits with spikes. I mean, look at the spikes are down at the bottom, and at the top there's nothing, but eventually they're going to start adding spikes everywhere. It's just a big fuck you. I have a lot of trouble with Dive Man for a while, and until I get him to just do this little combo again where he gets stuck in a loop trying to dive at me and me jumping over him to hit him, it's just impossible otherwise, man. He's so unpredictable. This section is fun. Ride these cute little grasshoppers across pits, and you have to jump off of them at the right time, or you plummet to your death on, you know, spikes or just an open pit, which is... They just have to do it to you twice, man. They're like, you know what, here's an open pit, here's spikes, good luck. I don't know exactly who Ringman is or what he stands for, but his levels are pretty and also very interesting once you get up into space, where I guess he gets his rings from Saturn and stuff like that. I don't know, it's really cute. It's just like a cool level. Pharaoh Man stage starts out in the night sky with some quicksand pulling you underneath, but what gets me is how it works. Like, you just see black sky behind you. Yeah, you see stars, but all it is sand that sucks you in and a night sky. So it looks like something's wrong with it, right? Like, it doesn't quite look realistic, but it feels weird. It feels like There's nothing. There's just nothing. This is all there is on the planet, this little section, and you fall into a pit. We get to the Wily stages again, and they are just as difficult as I remember all of the Wily stages being. Every time I freaking get to them, I'm like, oh yeah, dude, these are super hard, man. You just have to figure out exactly what to do and then perform it, because you're probably gonna have to perform it like 6 or 7 times, because you'll die to bosses until you figure out what to do. This is one of the weirdest boss fights. You fight a literal room, which moves around in broken pieces. You must slide underneath it or it'll slam you against the wall. You gotta jump inside of it and then slide under pieces and shoot this red, like, eye thing at the top. It's such a weird boss fight. I mean, it's cool, it's just weird. We get to the last stage, and as you can see, this is not Wily. This is a Russian guy, because apparently Wily doesn't make an appearance in this game. Oh no, actually wait, he's controlling this guy, using him to do whatever he wants, and then Wily just gets away with it. But at the end, you do 4 more Wily stages. Just in case if you didn't think it was enough, you have to do more Wily stages when he shows you that, like, actually, you know, and here's Proto Man, which is nice. Like, thank God he came to help, but now I have to do 4 more stages. This boss blows, man. I used Ring Man's ability to hit him, but he's just annoying what he does. He jumps, and the length of his jump is determined by pretty much how far away you are and how much screen, like, space you have left between him and the side of the wall. He'll summon these dudes over and over, so you really have to get used to sliding at the right time while also attacking him, and I just get confused too often, and he kills me so easy. This first phase of Wily is really wearing me thin, man. Every single time I fight him, it's hard for one reason or another. Now this very first phase is fairly easy. You just let him shoot his pink blasts, and eventually he stops. And then it shows this little fucker here, and he shoots these shots where you're going to be. So the game will try and calculate it, I guess, and it throws me off. I don't know why. It just always throws me off, and I take my time. It takes so long to kill this guy. This isn't even the hardest. This is finally the time where the final version of him is the hardest. Now, you have to charge up your shots, which in this game you can charge up your shots by holding down the shoot button. It'll charge up to a couple charge levels, and as long as you charge it up, you can deal damage, but you have to charge it. Otherwise, you're not doing damage. Welcome to Late Night Wily, where there's no lights and for some reason you have to shoot him when you see him in between the little lightning strikes, which sucks. And you've got to use Pharaoh Man's ability to hit him in a direction, because sometimes he's too high up for you to reach, so you've got to throw that thing in a diagonal. The problem is you got to learn where the diagonal is, otherwise it's not going to work. So yeah, this one's tough because you can't see shit, but at least it's doable. It's on to Mega Man 5, and we're starting to reach for some of the boss names, I feel like, since they've locked themselves down to one word and man. And a lot of these words have got to be something interesting. I mean, I guess Starman's cool. Wave Man, like he's just going to wave at you to death. And then Gravity Man, yeah, he's pretty cool. Gyro Man, like if you wanted a sandwich, you can go to him. If you thought swimming in the water and jumping around was cool, well, wait till you get on this thing and you ride it, and it's a little difficult because you do gotta jump over things like these guys. You can't really kill them until they're in front of you, so you must jump over them. You've also gotta watch for the guys in front of you. It's actually kind of a fun part of the game, although I do have some issues with the fist jumping. This little guy here will appear to you in levels and give you a free something or other. Obviously, an energy tank is probably what you want most, because even with free lives, when you start over from a continue, you just start over from where you were. I mean, the PS2 version has these like auto saves, so you don't have to have passwords anymore. Although you can't enter the passwords, they're just not necessary. So giving energy tanks is the best thing you can do. And there's a way to exploit it. If you climb up the ladder, see what he gives you, and it's not an energy tank, just crawl back down the ladder to the next screen, and then crawl back up, and he'll give you something again. Just don't pick it up until it's the energy tank, or at least the thing you want. So in this level, you start out in the woods, but you get inside this factory and you see that it's making tanks in the background, which is kind of a neat detail, you know what I mean? Like, each boss has a theme around what they are, and it's not just a fun name and a fun power. Like, they actually stand for something or other, and this guy stands for a secret base in the forest building tanks. I began to notice that Mega Man 5 was much easier. If you look in the bottom left corner of the screen, you can see 6 energy tanks. That's right, 6. I have 6 energy tanks to refill my health, although I don't use it there for some reason, but I have 6 of them, and honestly, I don't die very much in Mega Man 5. I'm afforded the ability to get through this game fairly quickly. If you hadn't had enough of the disappearing, reappearing blocks, then by all means, come here and check out some more of these puzzles, and actually try my best to cheat by using the little rocket, but it doesn't work. Now, this is an interesting Wily stage. I really like the idea of this one, and I wish I'd seen it a little more, but as you break these broken blocks around the level, it will slowly let the level fall towards you. So this adds another layer of trying to figure out how to get the level to go down far enough that you can actually make it up further, or get pierced by the fucking spikes in the wall. So you've got to really calculate where you need to go, otherwise the level's just gonna fall on top of you and kill you. They just love making you fall down pits with spikes everywhere. I mean, they're not even on the floor, they're on the walls now. You have to avoid everything by falling directly where you need to go. So gravity is your friend here for some reason. This whole game has been much easier, although it's still difficult, it's just not as insanely difficult. They just, maybe respected your time more at this point, maybe they ran out of ideas. Honestly, I think it's just they started to find their stride in making fun levels, but manageable for the player, because sometimes it's not fun to die over and over the one thing you just can't figure out how to get past, and you get stuck, and it's like, what's the point if I'm just gonna not have a good time? Wily's last forms are really not too bad, because at this point I have so many energy tanks I can take him on very easily. And that's it for Mega Man 5. I even saved Dr. Wily after I destroy his robots, and I saved Dr. Light too because, I'm Mega Man. For Mega Man 6, they really wanted to pretend like Wily was not the bad guy, so Mr. X says, "I'm gonna tell you the truth. I've actually been manipulating Dr. Wily. Ha 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 ha. I really hope he doesn't turn out to be Dr. Wily with sunglasses on." I actually played quite a bit of Mega Man 6 as well, and I like all of these bosses and their themes. I especially like Nightman and Yamato Man for no real good reason. I mean, I like their stage themes as well as the theme of the stage itself, like this guy is this kind of new age castle. The thing is, again, the bosses are much easier this time around, so I'm able to beat them with very, very few deaths, and while it is fun, it just isn't as difficult. I really like Blizzard Man stages with the boat that moves up and down, and you've got to watch both the water and the spikes on the ceiling and the ground, as well as these bombs that are introduced where they have a time limit on them. It's a very short one, and when you step on it, of course, it will explode after that time limit. They're placed all about the level, and you just kind of got to watch what you're doing on top of watching for enemies. So I skipped a lot of the bosses and a lot of the stages. They are starting to feel very much the same as I look back at them, and we get to the Wily stages where we use more of the 2 special suits you get in this game. See, there's a lot of different special abilities you get. Most of them have been your dog. This one is just you, and you have a jetpack as well as a punching fist thing that will break walls, and these are the things that you'll use a lot in these next levels to help you pass some of the obstacles, as well as you see this wall here. I'm gonna need to punch it, but it's kind of in a weird spot. These little platforms will switch around and I've got to jump over them to get there, but there's spikes above my head, so I really have to pay attention to how high I jump, and I just need to hit the wall and hope I can get there before I die on the spikes. Most of these bosses are pushovers. I use the Mega Buster charge shot to blast this guy up a bit. He's not really that tough. Yeah, so these bosses leading up are much easier than usual. Now, just like the last game where you had 4 stages and then suddenly 4 more stages, you have the same thing here. Like I said, Dr. X or Professor X or Mr. X, whoever it was, turns out to be Dr. Wily, of course. So then we have to go through 4 more stages of Wily stages because the last ones were Mr. X stages. So here we go with 9 energy tanks and pretty much everything you could ever want in this game, and I'm just slowly beating it. Wily's final forms are also just about as easy as they can be. Luckily, I'm able to beat these ones very quickly. Mega Man 7 begins a little bit more dramatically because this one's not on the NES and can actually have these kind of cool looking cutscenes. So we have to go back after Dr. Wily, which at first doesn't seem like it's him. I mean, but let's be honest, it's been him for the last 6 games. And so 4 of his robots activate without anyone's control, and so we've got to stop them. This game starts off with a bit of a tutorial level, which is not generally in the early Mega Man games because it started during the X series, having a nice little tutorial level to teach you the game. Here we're fighting Bass, and he's just, kind of like Proto Man. He takes over, and he has a dog named Treble, which, music references, it's a Squidward thing, music jokes. Now, it's a little weird because you only start off with 4 bosses, which means that you still have to beat the 4 bosses, and then when you beat them, you unlock the other 4 bosses. it just kind of restricts your initial picks. I'm not sure why. It's not that interesting. It doesn't really lend itself to the game, at least in my opinion. So I beat these 4 guys to get the next ones and beat those 4 guys. I still get their weaknesses like normal, so nothing new there. But at least it's a little bit of a switch up. In this game, the bosses take up much more screen space. Everything is bigger, even Mega Man is bigger. And I'm not sure how I feel about it all the time. It's fine, it's actually pretty fun, but it definitely changes up how you deal with bosses when they take up much more of the screen than they used to. Okay, so Proto Man can actually be found here, and he gives you some like helpful tips, and he tells you like, oh, you can use this weapon to break something in the level, and that's pretty much it, which, thanks Proto Man, I appreciate it. The stages in this game aren't really that difficult, but they are getting more detailed, and they have a lot more creative ideas behind even just one-off mechanics in a stage that you never see again. And I really do enjoy all the effort that they put into these games. Like, it's just fun to figure out what they want you to do and how they want you to do it. After you get a boss weapon in this game, Dr. Light tells you a little bit about the weapon and maybe gives you some hints about how you can use it, which is pretty cool actually. After we beat the initial 4 bosses, Dr. Wily attacks the Museum of Robots, where you can see him stealing some of the old robots he used to use against you, which is pretty cool, admittedly. I like it. One of them's a racer, one of them is a racer, and one of them's a vampire. I mean, I guess those are interesting. They're kind of cool. Hey, look, we get to fight a big dinosaur. It's pretty sweet. Like I said, these levels have some cool, interesting, creative things to do. It's just a fun time. I love the vampire stage. I love this jack-o'-lantern that's going around. It's got this really creepy feel to it. It's just a good time. Not that it was like well written or anything, but now Bass is our friend and we're, cool with him, I guess. Sure. I do get stuck on this guy for a little while. I think it's just the pattern of him zipping across the screen and then also calling down these big blocks. I don't know. I have an issue with what I'm supposed to do and when I'm supposed to do it. I think it's just hard to jump over the block he shoots at you. Otherwise, yeah, if you can get up there and hit him, he's not too bad. Near the end of Mega Man 7, someone tells me that there's an actual shop I can go to and buy things. I had no clue. I played the entire game not knowing you could go here, so that's hilarious. I've been collecting this currency to buy this stuff for who knows how long, and I just never was able to do it. So it's like, well, too bad the shop sucks. I'm a little confused, but I also kind of like this circus-like stage. I don't know why it reminds me of a circus, but just the colors and the springs rather than anything else. Like, it's more whimsical, like just the designs on the walls. I don't know, it just kind of looks like a circus. The timing of this part was a little difficult with the flame jets. It always seems like flame jets in video games lately have been a deal. Like, you have to get on these flame jets and you have to dodge them by jumping onto the thing that's shooting them, but obviously at the right time. Also, the way that they're set up just feels pixel perfect edge jumps. Like, it's really hard to jump up above this one on the left. It's just kind of difficult. This little mini boss is pretty difficult actually because of the variety of things he can do and just learning how to dodge each of those things until you can finally kill him before he kills you. They kept the boss rush mode in this game as well, so that's just something to expect every time you play a Mega Man game, a boss rush zone. Well, as always, the boss rush gets pretty easy after you figure out everyone's weaknesses. Now, Dr. Wily's first form here isn't anything too special. Obviously, it's a little annoying with these little skeleton guys on the ground, but completely doable the first time you see him. It's the second phase that is extremely difficult, and it's because he appears randomly and chooses a random ability that are all very quick. And you have to tell by the little colored balls he fires. And sometimes it's almost impossible where you are at and where those balls are to dodge them. And each one has a different element. One can shock you and make you sit still. One can put you on fire and deal a lot of damage. The other one can freeze you, and then he shoots some shots at the ground. So if you don't dodge one of those, you're going to land on the ground and get hit a second time. It's like double punishing. This guy does take me a while, and in fact a lot of people in chat said this one is really hard, and yeah, I agree. This form of Wily is one of the harder ones I fought. After you beat Wily, we get the biggest surprise in a Mega Man game I've ever seen. See, Wily usually gets away and that's it, but this time Mega Man says, "I gonna do what I should have done years ago," literally verbatim, and then he goes to try to kill Dr. Wily. Dr. Wily does say robots can't harm humans, and then Mega Man very painstakingly slowly says, "I'm more than a robot, die," which is so unlike Mega Man. I'm not sure if the team who had this just thought there's gotta be something more, but damn, I did not expect them to have Mega Man do this, and I think this is the last time he ever does something like this. Okay, so Mega Man 8 begins, and we get some really cool cutscenes, but I need you to listen to what they sound like, the voice acting, because it's very, very interesting.
Oh my.
Dr. Light, what is the problem?
A strange meteor has fallen to Earth just a while ago. This meteor seems to be emitting a powerful energy signature. Something this powerful must not fall into the hands of evil.
I understand, Dr. Light. I'm on it.
Thank you, Mega Man. If you can, please bring the meteor back.
Okay.
Okay, so after that hilariously bad voice acting, we get to see the animations of this game, and they're actually really nice. They have a lot of extra frames, and just everything looks very detailed, a little bit more cartoony. Not that that's a bad thing. I think it still looks really nice. It's just a really cool upgrade to see Mega Man still in the same style, but now, you know, on a newer system. I believe this was for the Saturn and the PS1, so we get a chance to see all this cool stuff in the Anniversary Collection, and there's a lot of new mechanics in the game. Although we still do follow fighting the Mega Man bosses and Wily just the same way we used to. Although we do get this really interesting static ability of shooting a little ball out that you can both kick and somehow jump off of. And apparently it's used in speedruns to help you get places you can't normally get to. It's an okay weapon, I think. I don't use it very often in the game because I'm not the greatest at it. I do try to use it as the special jumping mechanic with speedrunning, but there's no way I can do it as well as those guys can. As with the new setup, you start with just the 4 bosses, and you unlock the other 4 after you beat these ones, which is okay, I guess. It lets you have less choice, and it kind of, I don't know why they do it this way, but whatever, it's fine. In this game, the bosses also feel just a little bit easier than they used to. I mean, honestly, like I said, I think they're getting better at making it more fun for the player while still keeping it challenging enough. I mean, I'm getting hit quite a bit here, so it's not like it's the easiest thing in the world, but it's much more doable and a little bit more fun. We get a couple cool sections where we're on a snowboard, and it's a lot of fun actually, although later in the game when we get to the later stages, like the Wily stages, they get very difficult with precision jumping, pinpoint accuracy, and understanding what's about to happen. It's like the only way to be able to do it is to know what you're about to come up to. We get another flying section, which is kind of neat. We even get the guy who gives you items to help us. He shoots these little balls out at things. It's a fun section. It's not hard at all, but the game is just really detailed. It's really pretty looking. There's a lot of colors, and I think the use of colors in this game is just a good job. Tengu Man's boss fight's pretty cool. Obviously, we're not inside of our usual spot of an arena, like a square arena. We're outside, and he can toss you off the sides, which is really cool. It just feels like the level is more dynamic now. You get this flavor that you didn't get before where you're just surrounded by blocks on all sides and you're stuck somewhere. Here, we're outside, around the open air. It's just a neat idea. Every so often, I go back to the shop, which this game has, and it's much more accessible in this game. It's obvious that there's a shop. And actually, these things kind of matter a little bit more. You actually get some cool upgrades for Mega Man, and the only way to get them is to get these big bolts to use as currency. They're not something that's very common. You have to search for them. And when you get enough of them, you can get these cool abilities, which aren't necessary, but they are way, way more helpful than you'd at first imagine. I really like this carnival-style level yet again. I don't know why, but Mega Man and Sonic do these like whimsical casino circus type stages really well. It's fun. I don't know why. I just really enjoy it. It's supposed to be kind of weird that it's fun and also bad at the same time, right? Like this guy has a circus, but it's also not a good guy. So I don't know. The flavor is cool. It's on point for me. Now, just so you know, in this game, the story is a little different. There's like these two robot god type dudes who are very strong, who are fighting in space, and it's a deal here in this game. I don't remember anything about it because I wasn't really that interested. It's another Mega Man game, and it's just hard to follow because it's not that big of a plot point for me, although some people do like it, maybe some people don't like it. It's fine. There's a good guy, there's a bad guy. We're trying to help the good guy. The bad guy's trying to get us. We need to help this guy so we can destroy the other one, or at least stop him. That's about it. Throughout the series, we've seen several places where there are waterfalls that you must traverse up and down, and in this one, it's no different. It's really pretty though. Obviously, the use of colors and the ability to have, more frames of animation and just more data because it's a PS1 game. But this little mini-boss is freaking hard. It's actually kind of fun. I like this mini-boss. Aquaman comes in with the coolest intro ever, showing his name in a little rainbow, which is so cool. I love it. It's like imagination from SpongeBob, but Aquaman's like, it's my name. For some reason, Swordman lives in what looks like an Indiana Jones type temple, full of lava, traps, little mini bosses everywhere, spikes everywhere. It's kind of a difficult level, honestly way more difficult than the boss. I beat him in the first go, but the level I died on several times. Astro Man's level is very weird. It's got all of these mechanical flowers everywhere, and you start outside and you move inside to this weird labyrinth/maze thing in 2D, and this thing wraps around on itself, and until you realize that it does, you won't be able to escape it. You need to move far to the right or the left, going back over the level and finding new ways to get to and from areas you couldn't access from one direction. And it's a little difficult. It's a little hard to kind of put the picture in my head of what this place looks like. I just kind of went around until I found it, so maybe you're better at it than I am. This level in the Wily stages is the one I was talking about. You ride this board and you must know what is coming up and how to deal with it, because you die in one hit when you fall off of most things, or if you get hit by an enemy, yeah, you have health, but they most likely will knock you off of the stage. And some of these things require you to move far past where you can see or wait until the last second. It's just very difficult. It took me many attempts. This is actually the hardest part of the game for me, mostly because I was having trouble jumping. I don't know if it was my controller. I don't know if it was me. I have this problem a lot, so it might be me. But hey, these controllers are old and I slam those things pushing buttons. I don't know if anyone else does, but when I push buttons on my controller, it's like as hard as I can unless it's pressure sensitive, and then I try my best to be soft with it. But I think these controllers have just endured beatings for me for 100 games. So at this point, I'm glad the controller is even like in one piece and functional. And I don't mean I throw them. I don't throw or hurt my controllers. It's just the way I handle them is so rough. So it may be my controller, but honestly, I think it's just me having issues. But maybe you fare better than I do. We get another special Wily stage with us flying in the air, but this time we actually have a little mini-boss. It's kind of like a Gradius-style mini-boss, which is cool, I suppose. We get Astrobot, who's behind us there. I don't remember his actual name, but he's supposed to be our friend, and we destroy that thing a bit, and it's kind of fun flying around. The Wily stages definitely pick up on the difficulty and some of the mechanics. They're a lot of fun, and I make a lot of mistakes, but this game is actually pretty good for a late game Mega Man game that's not the X series. We go through our usual boss rush mode until we have to fight Wily in his two different stages. Now, this first stage is pitifully easy as usual. The second phase is much harder, but it's still easier than the last one. It felt like the last one was so random in what he did, and it was like impossible to decide what to do. So using the flame sword here, I'm able to jump up and smack him and kill him after, about 3 tries. That is it. Mega Man 8 is complete, and with it, the entire Mega Man franchise on this collection CD, which is great. I loved playing through Mega Man 1 through 8. I think my favorite is still number 3, simply for the boss designs and the music, although number 2 is a very close second. I liked all of these games, though. It was a lot of fun. I think the one I liked the least was probably, I would say 7. While it was fine, it just wasn't as fun, especially with what happened at the end, Mega Man telling Wily he's gonna die. I think they just wanted to try and make him interesting, but it just looked insincere, right? Like, it looked like they were forcing him to say these things. Whatever. But Mega Man Anniversary Collection is complete. I know I missed a lot of things and didn't talk about a lot of things, but that's because there's 8 whole games. And no, I do not have the time to deep dive into all this stuff because this channel is about getting through these games as quick as possible. So, thank you everyone. This is going to be game number 82, even though I beat this months ago, at least at the time of this video. And I'm glad to have finally gotten the video done. It was kind of daunting thinking about how many Mega Man games there were, and I realized there was no way for me to talk about each individual level and boss without making this a 3-hour video. I mean, honestly, it's already like a 40-minute video, and this is very abridged from what I originally wanted to do, but it just, you know, this is just a journey through, and the journey through was fun, although frustrating at times with how difficult things were. So, to save you all 3 hours of just looking at every single level for 5 minutes and every single boss, which there's like 100 stages in this game, in this whole anniversary collection. But thank you all so much for being here. Thank you if you watched the video this far. Thank you if you were in the stream helping me through Mega Man and watching me suffer. Thank you to all the memberships on Patreon, on Twitch, on YouTube. You guys are making it possible to get all of these games around to play. And just thank you, everyone. I don't know how to say thank you any more than I already can. It's just, this has been a wonderful time, and this challenge is just so much fun, and I'm glad that other people are also enjoying it. That is the most important thing to me. So if you want to come back to see more, we'll be here. Game number 83 will be here soon. Game number 84 and 85 over the Christmas holiday, which, you know, if you're watching this during the Christmas holiday, then there you go. You'll see some more videos soon. So thank you, everyone. I'll be back for another video later.